Hey guys, I hope y'all having a good summer. We're going to review just a little bit from your packet this time. We're going to review sexual and asexual reproduction this time. All right, what we're going to learn this time, or what the video is going to be about, is how to tell the difference between asexual and sexual reproduction, and we're going to learn some different types of asexual reproduction, and that's your lesson objective this time. On the packet that's going out, you're going to have a reading section on the asexual and sexual reproduction. You're going to be able to tell the difference between the two, and you're going to have some questions to answer, and you're also going to be able to find the answers to those questions on the packet. All right, we all know what sexual reproduction is. We got Daddy over here, we got Mama over here, and we got our little love in between, and then here comes baby, okay? We all know that's how people reproduce, okay? So this is just a review for us. Then, but we got to think about bacteria. Remember, we talked about in class how that bacteria reproduced in a different way. It doesn't do the same thing as people does, okay? They are a little different. So remember what we talked about, how that they didn't have to have a partner to reproduce, okay? So that's your asexual reproduction for that. Now, the modes of reproduction, okay, that we talked about. If you will remember, there were two ways. We talked about sexual and we talked about asexual, okay? Those are the two ways that things reproduce, sexual and asexual. Now, in sexual reproduction, if you will remember, we talked about it takes male and female to have an offspring, okay? This is the majority of the ways that all the animals reproduce. We talked about that. It takes the genes from the male and the female. Remember, we talked about you get half from mama, you get half from daddy, and that's what makes you. We talked about, remember we did the experiments in class, we did the little things about how we had the eyelash, the finger, the pinky, the toe. We talked about all of that. We talked about the lip, how some people had the crooked the lip and all. We did all that. We talked about half from mama, half from daddy makes you, okay? And those are we talked about the genes, what makes the genes and all. And that's the offspring. Now, advantages of the sexual reproduction. What is the advantages of having sexual reproduction? More diversity, more genetic diversity with this. You get different things. You're not just like your mama, you're not just like your daddy, you're something totally different, okay? I know some of you say, well, I look just like my mama, or I look just like my daddy. Yeah, you may have certain more characteristics of mom or more characteristics of daddy, but you're not just like them, okay? We're all just a little bit different, and that's a good thing. And specific traits is what help a lot of the animals survive in their environment, okay? They have camouflage to help them survive. We talked about the lizards and the camouflage. We talked about helping certain animals like the snow. When the snow, we saw the rabbit, how it was camouflaged so you couldn't see it, okay? The traits help them survive, okay? That's what helps all the animals and all survive. And these are the advantages of the sexual reproduction. Now, remember our poison dart frog here? If you'll remember, they're known for their colorful exterior. Now, one thing that they did, remember for the predators, was that they were very toxic and they could ward the predators off by looking like something else. Okay? And if you'll notice the two pictures, they look totally different. But that's how they get around the predators, and they know that they can change like this. So it helps them survive. That's just a survival instinct there. Now, the disadvantages. We got the advantages, now we've got to turn around and get the disadvantages. Okay? It takes longer for asexual reproduction. Okay? It can be difficult for some of the species to find a mate. And it's less reliable. Okay? Those are your three disadvantages. Sometimes the pregnancy doesn't work, and sometimes it takes so long for the pregnancy to happen. Like this shark, it takes 3.5 years for this shark to have a baby. Okay? That's a long time. Okay? So you're not going to have a lot of offspring with this shark. That's a disadvantage for this shark. The elephants, we talked about how long it takes for the elephants to reproduce. It takes 22 months, almost 2 years, for an elephant to have a baby. Okay? So that's a disadvantage because that's not quick. Okay? That's a disadvantage for the elephant. We talked about that. We looked at that. Also, now, we're going to go switch to asexual reproduction now. We looked at sexual, now we're going to switch to asexual. The organisms, they do not have to have a mate to reproduce for asexual. Remember, they make something just like themselves, okay? They are just like themselves. They're able to reproduce on their own. That's where we get our bacteria, our fungi, our plants, and even some of our animals do this. But they look just like the parent, okay? They make something just like themselves. All right, the advantages, they do not have to spend time finding a mate. The energy is focused on solely making offspring. That's it. Think about your skin cells. Remember we talked about for the asexual reproduction, our skin cells, that they produce more skin cells, our hair, they produce more hair cells. We talked about, and some of you even come up with, that you're sure glad that your skin cells didn't make like a rabbit or something. Somebody said something off the wall that was crazy when we were talking about that. We are glad that our skin cells only make skin cells. They reproduce quickly. I mean, remember we talked about how that your skin cells, when you rub or when you take your clothes off, they automatically come off because they reproduce all the time. That's what the asexual reproduction is. The example was the bacteria. We looked at this in class. 100 bacteria cells can divide and produce millions in only a few hours. So bacteria reproduces really, really quickly. Now, the disadvantages to asexual reproduction, okay? They have no genetic diversity. They make things just like themselves. There's no diversity in it. The offspring is a clone. It looks just like the parent, okay? And they can't change to what their environment is, okay? They can't make themselves change to something that's going to adapt to the environment. They cannot change anything. They are what they are. They're a clone. So they can't adapt to the environment. You know, if it's hot, and they're in that environment, they're going to have to stay there. If it turns cold, they'll die. That's just, they cannot adapt. The types of asexual reproduction, you got binary fusion, you got fragmentation, and you've got budding. Those are the three types of asexual reproduction. Now, in binary fusion, what happens is the parent cell splits into two identical daughter cells, the same size. It just splits and you've got two exactly the same. That's what your binary fusion is. You've got one, two come out, it breaks, you've got two identical here. This one and this one came from that. They're identical to the parent. That's what binary fusion is. You can see it starts here. This is going to separate and this is going to separate. Remember, we looked at this under the microscope, okay? If you'll remember, we even watched this one split. And we saw all of this under the microscope, if y'all remember. I need something to drink now. All right, the fragmentation. Remember the starfish we looked at? And in the video, we saw the arm come off of it. And we saw it grow into, over time lapse, we saw that arm grow into another starfish. That's what fragmentation is, okay? It breaks and it becomes another starfish. Okay, that's what the fragmentation is. There's your starfish, the arm comes off, it goes here, and it forms another starfish. All right, buddy. All right, this is where the parent here, right here, comes up and there's like a little bud that happens on the side of it. It gets bigger, and once that bud comes off, it forms another one, and here this makes me think of a cactus when this happens. I always see a cactus when I think of the budding. All right, we're going to watch it. We're going to watch a video now with the amoeba sisters.
When I was 6 years old, I went through a phase where I was really into plants. My sister never really went through a plant phase, although to be fair, she was also 2 years old at the time, so she was kind of into everything. I wanted to have a lot of plants where I could water them and take care of them, but my plant caring skills were not so great, so only some plants were safe. A cactus, perhaps. But you get sick of cacti. One day it so happened, my dad brought home a spider plant. And as usual, the way I imagined a spider plant turned out to not exactly be what a spider plant was, but I was also very happy it wasn't a cactus. Take really good care of this spider plant and it will have little baby plants, my dad said. Then we can plant the plantlets and they'll grow into new spider plants too. It'll be fun, he said. Let's just say I think my dad may have underestimated my dedication to this. Spider plants are produced by making new identical baby spider plants. The baby plants are genetically identical to the parent plant, meaning they contain the same DNA, a clone basically. You can plant the plantlets and ta-da, new spider plant. As a kid, I didn't realize that what I was seeing at the time was asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction requires only one organism and results in offspring that are genetically identical, uniform, no genetic variety. And many times there can be an advantage that this can be efficient and fast, since only one organism is involved. Asexual reproduction also occurs with very simple organisms, like bacteria. These prokaryotes literally split into two in a process known as binary fission. Many single-cell eukaryotic organisms, like many protists, can do this too. Another type of asexual reproduction that starts with B is budding. A very small, amazing animal called the hydra can reproduce by budding. That means they literally just bud an identical offspring right off of themselves. It falls off and grows into a new hydra. So in the spider plant example, this was asexual reproduction. But it's important to realize that not all plants can reproduce asexually. In fact, spider plants themselves can reproduce another way. Spider plants and many other plants can undergo sexual reproduction. In fact, lots of organisms can. Some fungi and some protists, many plants, many animals. Sexual reproduction involves the uniting of gametes, which are reproductive cells, to make a new organism. If you're talking about animals, typically these gametes would be known as the sperm cell of the male organism, and an egg cell of the female organism. Gametes typically have half the number of chromosomes as a somatic cell. So in humans, sperm and egg cells each have 23 chromosomes. When they combine, they can produce a new cell, a fertilized egg known as a zygote, which would then have 46 chromosomes. This fertilized egg can continue to divide to make more cells and more cells. Oh, look! This fertilized human egg cells and blastocysts now. Yeah, we'll keep dividing from there. Now, while that was an example of gametes uniting to make a new human, realize that all new organisms that result from sexual reproduction have the potential to be genetically diverse. In sexual reproduction, the offspring are not clones. They receive genetic information from their two different parents. And gametes themselves tend to be different from each other due to independent assortment and crossing over, which both happen when the gametes are made in a process called meiosis. Check out our meiosis video for more about that. So the gametes are different from each other, and they combine to make a unique organism. Now, sexual reproduction can be more time-consuming because it does require two gametes finding each other and uniting. A little more complicated than asexual reproduction, when in many cases you just split. So then what is the benefit in sexual reproduction, and why does this even matter? Well, different genes can be different express traits, and different express traits could be beneficial in the case of environmental changes. Let's consider these grasshoppers. Let's say the vegetation present changes due to a dry season, and now some colors of grasshoppers have better advantages than others in blending in, which means perhaps better advantages from hiding from predators. Those grasshoppers with the advantage potentially could have higher fitness. But see, that variation is present in the first place because of sexual reproduction. There are definite benefits that come with variety. Well, that's it for the Neva sisters and the 92 stay curious.
All right, now, this is just some questions to make sure that you understand what's going on. Y'all can look at those after it's over and go through these. This is the end of the summers here, so be safe, okay? Y'all have a great summer, take care, and I'll see y'all next year.